Hello, I'm David Breeden. I'm the senior minister at First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, a historically humanist congregation. This is Coffee and Wisdom when we take a humanist look at theological questions. And for the month of May, I want to look at syncretism. I'm calling it sin and syncretism because sin is one of those ideas that gets used in various kinds of cultural contexts, which is a very good example of how syncretism works. Very quickly, to define that, this is the Wikipedia definition. Syncretism is the combining of different beliefs in various schools of thought. Syncretism involves the merging or assimilation of several originally discrete traditions, especially in the theology and mythology of religion, thus asserting an underlying unity and allowing for an inclusive approach to other faiths. The Oxford Dictionaries says syncretism came into English in the early 17th century from the Latin syncretismus, and actually it comes then from the Greek unite against a third party. And yes, you see the term Cretan in there, sin against or working together, and then Cretan working together against the Cretans is the idea. But it means a lot different now. And here we are, syncretism blending differing religious beliefs, philosophies, or practices into something new. Are you guilty? Asks this tile. And indeed, doing research online, you're going to see all kinds of attitudes about this idea of syncretism, of how ideas get meshed, and if they ought to get meshed. So, is it possible to wool syncretism out? Is a question that I want to ask. Well, this also is online, and that is how we do create syncretism. Worldview number one, a non biblical pagan worldview, says this slide. Worldview number two, the biblical worldview. And then worldview number three, a new belief, the result of combining one and two. And what this slide is getting at is that is not a good idea. You have to stick with the biblical worldview and ignore all of those pagan elements, as it's calling it, from the outside world. So, how do you keep a pure biblical worldview? Is a very good question. Charles Corwin, a Christian commentator, wrote an essay called Why Syncretism Won't Work. In that essay, he says this: if we try to syncretize Christianity and indigenous religions, we pull down the high and holy Jehovah to the level of man and custom. Man, his customs, his walk through life are lifted to a transcendental plane, highest in the scale of values and alone worthy of man's concern. The nature of God, the awfulness of sin, and judgment, these become hard sayings, painful for the seeker to assimilate. If God be God, let us serve him, capital H, him. Trying to make Christianity compatible with non Christian religions and cultures only paves the way for its extinction. And so there is a Christian theologian saying, no, we cannot have any kind of syncretism. When you go into a culture, uh, we have to stay pure within the Christian way of thinking and not in any way compromise with that local culture. Well, does that happen is a very good question. One thing you can do is do some web research. Just type in the many faces of Jesus, and you're going to find many faces of Jesus across all kinds of cultural differences in which various artists attempt to make a culturally specific Jesus that will be understandable to the people that the artist wants to communicate with. And these are all over the internet, from Hindu to African to South American. There are all kinds of faces of Jesus out there. Um, African American Jesus, Chinese Jesus, the Chinese Jesus among the bamboo, a Hindu Jesus here with a couple of extra arms, um, one of the ways that Hindu iconography has communicated the idea that gods can do a whole lot of things at once. A little closer to a Palestinian Jesus, hipster Jesus, got his way cool glasses on and a flannel shirt. Very famous one from the 1930s, Jesus in a bread line from the Great Depression era. A communist Jesus with a nice red sash and the hammer and sickle, driving out the bankers of Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan and Wells Fargo with a whip. The Jesus becomes a communist and drives out the money changers from the temple. Communist Jesus again with a lot of red going on and a poster with a hammer and sickle. And Jesus has acquired a uniform and a Kalashnikov to be a good communist. Also, we have all kinds of American Jesuses too. Again, the syncretism, bringing the idea of religion into what it is you're into. If you're into whole grain eating, you can have a very buff Jesus on your wall, eating 100% whole grain, which obviously makes one healthy, is the thought in that one. Yeah, we have Jesus showing off his father. You can get the tattoo of the tattoo. We have boxing Jesus, so that boxers too need to, in some way, understand the cultural context of Jesus, apparently. And Jesus, the successful entrepreneur, in which Jesus, yeah, he's going to keep the long hair and the beard, but by golly, he's going to get himself a Brooks Brothers suit and a nice neutral tone tie. We have Jesus, the American politician, with a nice red tie and his suit with an American flag lapel pin, as so many American politicians love to do. And reminders. I'm not judgmental, but he is. Just remember that myself, I'm not making rules. By golly, Jesus is making the rules. And remember, as I read earlier from Charles Corwin and why syncretism won't work. Trying to make Christianity compatible with non-Christian religions and cultures only paves the way for its extinction. Well, is that true? It's kind of debatable there, isn't it? And I think the Buddhist Jesus would very peacefully deal with that whole line of thought. Yes, syncretism has worked very well for Christianity in the many phases of Jesus. Next week, I'm going to be talking about syncretism and strange brews. That is, yeah, we can see in the iconography development of syncretism with the face of Jesus that the faces get very culturally specific. But sometimes syncretism will lead to something that is way different than the original way of thinking. And we want to look at that next week. If you have comments or questions, or if you would like to join in our live Zoom on Fridays at 9 a.m. Central Time, email me for the Zoom link, minister@firstunitarian.org. Thanks so much for tuning in this week. Do some web research and enjoy all the different kinds of syncretism out there. Thanks a lot.